Yo, what up everybody? It's me, Fitness65, bringing you another special video again today. This time I'm going to be doing a WrestleMania 6 review. Now, yesterday I did a WrestleMania 7 review, and that was a redo video because I didn't like how that video was done. But today, this is WrestleMania 6. Also, most likely I'm going to be bringing the Wrestling Forgotten Gems back, so stay tuned for that in the next couple videos. I might be bringing that back because someone suggested to me of bringing it back, so you expect that in the next couple videos. But anyhow, getting off of talking a lot, I wanted to get to this video. WrestleMania 6 was from Toronto, Ontario Skydome in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It was April 1st, and this WrestleMania was like the stacked card. I mean, you had about 14 matches, which was unheard of at the time for a pay-per-view to have that many matches, but the WWF managed to have that many matches, and it was just pretty shocking, and some of them didn't really get that much time, so it was like, why would you have that many matches if some of those matches didn't get enough time? But nowadays in WWE and other mainstream wrestling companies, they only have 7 matches, sometimes 5, sometimes 6, so now they just cut the fat off of what they did back then to just sort of keep some of the matches short and sweet. But yeah, this WrestleMania was stacked. Had a lot of matches. Some of the matches delivered, some of them didn't, and some of them were just way too short and had no business, and then some of them had no business being on the card. So let's get to this review. And by the way, this video is probably going to be a 2-part video because, like I said, there's a lot of WrestleMania matches, and it's going to be a lot of explaining about some of these matches. So we get started with the first matchup after the WrestleMania thing that they were doing. After that, the first match started with Koko Ware against Rick the Model Martel. This was a good opener. Probably not the best WrestleMania openers of all time, but it was a pretty good opener. You had Rick Martel, who was just breaking away from Strikeforce, and he was in his singles career. This was his debut as his WrestleMania debut as a singles wrestler, and he was taking on Koko Ware, who was a pretty good worker. This was a very good, fast-paced matchup. You had Koko Ware do all his usual offense that he was doing back in the 90s. You had Rick Martel hit some nice moves, and it was just a very good matchup, and the crowd pretty much got into this matchup. But yeah, the crowd pretty much got into this matchup. Just a fun matchup, but not one of the best WrestleMania opening matches. Overall, this was a good matchup. Give this match 2 stars. The ending came when Koko Ware tried to go up to the top again and hit Rick Martel with the crossbody, and Rick Martel sidestepped him, and he put the Boston Crab submission on him to end the match in a submission hold. Probably the first time a WrestleMania match ended in a submission. And yeah, that's pretty much your match. Overall, I give this match 2 stars, as there were some parts that were good, but most of the parts in this matchup were kind of boring, but it was still a pretty good matchup for what it was. The second matchup on here was for the World Tag Team Championships. It was the Colossal Connection with Bobby the Brain Heenan against Demolition. This was a boring matchup, hard to get into. Both guys didn't really do much in this matchup to sort of get me sucked in. Just a horrible matchup. And it was pretty much a handicap matchup, as the Colossal Connection only had Koko do most of the work in this matchup against Demolition, who were sort of doing their thing and their power moves in this matchup. Awful matchup. The end came when I believe they got rid of Andre the Giant, and Demolition hit the decapitator on Koko to sort of end things for this matchup. Terrible matchup, horrible, but the crowd did sort of get into it, but it was just not a good matchup. And then, of course, you had the end where Bobby the Brain Heenan got in Andre's face and told him he dropped the ball. Then he slapped Andre the Giant, and then Andre the Giant hit him, and then Koko ended up attacking him, tried to attack him, but Andre the Giant blocked him, and he hit him, and thus that cemented Andre the Giant's face turn. I mean, it would have been good if Andre the Giant was going to wrestle after this, but he didn't, as this would be his final WrestleMania matchup. His final WrestleMania appearance as an active wrestler, and it was a shame. But yeah, overall, this match gets a dud. This matchup was just hard to sit through, and it was just boring. We then go to the third matchup, which is another dud between Hercules Hernandez against Earthquake. This matchup was just horrible. I mean, it was just boring. It's hard to get through, and it was basically Earthquake just dominating this matchup with his powerful moves, and Hercules trying to take down the big Earthquake. Then when he finally did, he tried to do his side suplex, but he couldn't get him up, and he ended up getting slammed, and Earthquake did the Earthquake splash on him to end things for him. Overall, dud, horrible matchup. We then go to the fourth matchup on here, which is between Mr. Perfect against Brutus the Barber Beefcake. This was a pretty good matchup. I mean, it was better than what I expected because Brutus the Barber Beefcake was not known for being a very good worker, but you have Mr. Perfect, who was a pretty good worker and who was putting on good matches. He sort of was able to get something out of Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Very fun, entertaining matchup. Mr. Perfect sold well for Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Beefcake held his own a little bit in this matchup. Mr. Perfect did his usual offense, the thing where he hits the neck back, the drop kick, and all his usual offense. The end came when Mr. Perfect tried to do a move on Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and he hit that slingshot suplex into the exposed turnbuckle. That sort of ended things with Mr. Perfect, so the ending came out of nowhere. But overall, this was a very good matchup. I enjoyed it, and it's probably one of the best Brutus the Barber Beefcake matches in his career, because most of his matches the rest of his career really weren't that good. But overall, I enjoyed this matchup. I give it 2.5 stars, as this was a very good matchup. We then go to another dud. It was Bad News Brown against Roddy Piper. This was a horrible matchup. It was boring. It was hard to sit through. It was mostly these guys brawling and then beating the hell out of each other until the DQ came and the referee just threw the contest out. Just a horrible matchup, and I just don't know why they even bother adding this matchup on here. Just not a very good matchup, and it gets a dud. Terrible matchup, and I don't see why anybody would want to sit through it, and why they would add this expecting people to sit through it. Horrible matchup. We then go to another dud, which was the Hart Foundation against the Bolsheviks. This was another squash as the Bolsheviks came in, and then the Hart Foundation came in. The Bolsheviks sung their national anthem, and then the Hart Foundation couldn't take anymore, and they just attacked them from behind, hit the heart attack, and that was pretty much it. Just your standard squash. And if this is what they were going to do, why even bother adding this on the card? But overall, dud. This could have been somewhat of a good matchup, but they decided to end it short, and thus this match gets a dud. Not a very good matchup. The next matchup on here is between the Barbarian against Tito Santana. This was a pretty good matchup for what it was. You had the Barbarian, who was making his Wrestlemania debut as a singles wrestler, because the year before he was tag teaming with the Warlords. So after they broke that team up, they had him become a singles wrestler, and he was taking on Tito Santana. This was a very good matchup. You had Tito Santana sell the Barbarian's offense. Barbarian looking like a monster, hitting some nice top rope moves, and Tito Santana doing his usual offense. Very good matchup. The ending came when I believe Tito Santana tried to go for that flying forearm, or he tried to do something, but he ended up hitting his neck on the ropes, and then Barbarian hit that top rope clothesline, and Tito Santana sold it real well, and that'd be the end of the match. Overall, I enjoyed this. This match gets 2 stars. Very good matchup. And this was just one of your matches of Tito Santana doing everything he can to sort of get the Barbarian over as a threat, and to get the Barbarian as a threat. Very good matchup. I enjoyed it. We then go to the next matchup on here, which is between Dusty Rhodes, Sapphire, and the Macho Man Randy Savage and Queen Sherri. This was another one of those duds. This was not a very good matchup at all. Hard to sit through. You had some botched spots in this matchup, and overall it was just not a very good matchup. And I had no reason why they added this on here, because this match was just terrible, atrocious, and it's just hard to sit through. I mean, I tried to sit through it, but I nearly fell asleep. Not a very good matchup. It gets a dud. This was just a terrible matchup. Probably one of Macho Man's worst wrestling matches in his career, and that's pretty much saying something, as he had a lot of good matches throughout his career. But yeah, that's pretty much the first part of the video. Stay tuned for part 2. Rate, comment. I'm out. Peace.